Welcome back to another video. I'm continuing my theme of the past videos, which was working on foundation layers for the 18th century, specifically to go under a robe à la française. So today's video is going to be focusing on stays. Now this is going to be a two-part series. The first video, this video is going to focus on the fitting and the mock-up stage of the process. So taking the pattern, like a readily available pattern, one that's already made, and adjusting it to fit my body. So I've decided to focus on the mid to late part of the 18th century, and so the pattern I decided to go with is this group Augusta stays, which covers, I believe, the mid 1770s through the 1780s. So perfect for the time period I'm going for. So I'm going to go ahead and get that pattern cut out and the mock-up sewn up so we can begin the fitting process. So this is not my usual intro background. I usually film this in my apartment, but I forgot to do one before I left, and I want to get this video out before I return. So decided, why not? There's no better background than, trees, the ocean, birds chirping. So yeah, I have this mock-up pretty much completely sewn. All that's left is to put some, grommets in. I'm not going to do that directly to the mock-up. Instead, I have my Edwardian corset mock-up, and I'm going to harvest the lacing strip that I have attached here. And this is just something I made a while ago that I reuse when making corset or stays mock-ups so that I don't have to waste grommets and time, putting them in. So I'm going to go ahead and seam rip that out. I might also harvest, there's some bones in here that I think I'm going to take out and then just use to quickly throw some bones on this thing to get the general shape and see how it looks. So here's my first mock-up. It's just the size 42 cut out as is. I made no adjustments prior to sewing this up. So just a quick front back side view. We have front, side, and the back. So some things I am seeing off the bat is that it's too long for me. I kind of already knew that this was probably going to be the case with this. I am generally short torsoed. My bust to waist distance is rather small, and so you can kind of see this buckling happening, this wrinkling, because it's just it wants to be lower because it's longer, but it's not meant to be. There's the one thing, and two, it's too long. So since it's meant to sit around your waist, it's supposed to be that smaller measurement in general. It's not supposed to go over the circumference of your hips, so it's not meant to do that. So all it wants to do is just go up to where it the measurement matches, and so that's telling me that it's too long in the waist. And you can kind of see all of this happening here, and it's kind of happening at the front. It's harder to tell because of this straight panel here, but I'm assuming that's what's causing this wrinkling to happen, because it's wanting to push up. So my plan, I think, of attack to make adjustments to my pattern is to take probably 3/8 to half an inch out in the front, and then more 3/8 inch in the back, and hopefully that raises it up. And it's also causing because it's also pushing down on my hips because there's no room, so it's causing the tabs to want to stick out like this instead of I would say more lay nicely over the hips. So that's the first adjustment I think I'm going to make. The second is that I have a little bit too much room in the bust. I really can get hands in here. I could honestly even another way to tell is if you actually lace this all the way as tight as it could be, these would kiss, versus everything else is pretty evenly laced. So I know I'm gonna have to take some out. I'll probably take it out of like this front panel and maybe some of the side panels. I'll have to look at it on the flat and see kind of what method I want to do. I like where the, I think I like where the armhole is sitting. I think that's kind of where it should be. Again, I'm gonna double check that. I'm not well versed in stays, but I'm gonna double check that to make sure that it's sitting in the right spot. I think these are sitting in the right spot. Like from what I was reading, you want them as far to the side as possible without them like starting to jab you. And right now I feel like I have good motion. I don't feel like it's cutting in like uncomfortably. Also, ideally, you'd probably want to be fitting this in a shift. I didn't feel like putting mine on. I just have my t-shirt on, and technically you don't want to be wearing a bralette or any like modern support garments. I'm guilty. I just have really thin bralette underneath, so it's like literally no support, but. I finished making the preliminary adjustments to my pattern. I went ahead and shortened it about 1 inch. That might have been a little excessive. Probably should have been a little more conservative and maybe had just done 1/2 inch. But I just went for 1 inch. The other adjustment I made was to bring in this front panel by 1/4 inch, so that's going to shrink it down by 1/2 inch overall. And for these two pieces, this one in particular, I decided to shorten it based on the waistline I had marked versus using their adjustment line here. I just think that given that I want to shorten it, parallel to my waistline, like that's how I want to like shorten it. This, to me, this is nothing. Because this panel sits like this on the body. It doesn't sit like this. So I don't think this is a smart place to shorten this panel in particular. So I went with the line I marked for my waist and used that as a reference to shorten it. Now, I don't know if this is gonna work. This could come to bite me in the butt. And maybe this is the proper one, but I don't know, gut feeling that this will turn out better than this adjustment. I did do 2 to kind of compare the differences in the pattern. I don't know, I like this one better. I did the same with this. I went on based on the line I marked for my waist. It wasn't that different from this line, so I guess it wouldn't have mattered too much. So that's what I did. These front and back pieces, pretty straightforward. It's perpendicular to the center back and center front line. Really? You're on my pattern. You're on my pieces, dude. So here's my second mock-up. I made 2 changes. The first being to shorten it by 1 inch. And the second was just bringing in the bust a bit at this panel by 1/4 inch on each side. So 1/2 inch total. I'm still seeing some buckling happening at that side back piece. And so what I've gone ahead and done was on this side, I cut up into the sides where that point was having a lot of stress. And you can kind of see like when I put it together, there's probably about 1 inch there. And I'll have to kind of distribute that. So 1/2 inch on this side, 1/2 inch on the other side. And I'm hoping that'll fix the problem. I think the back looks pretty good. Sorry for don't know if you're getting a good angle, probably not. I think the back panel looks fine. It's just this side panel that's causing me a problem. And what I think I'm gonna do is just recut this piece and then sew it back into both sides with my adjustments and hope that fixes the rest of the problem. I marked the fold that I saw on the mock-up and I transferred that line to the pattern, and then I drew a perpendicular line so that I could slash it open and spread it like so. So the next step for me is to grab a piece of paper, put her under here, and then kind of tape it. I'm just going to tape this for now. Okay, so this is mock-up 2.1. In 2.0, the only adjustments that were made were to shorten the waist and then to bring in the bust. I think I brought in the bust by ½ inch. With 2.1, because I was running out of fabric, I only had enough to just replace the back panels, which luckily I had just enough to do that, because really the problem child of this stays pattern for me was this side back here. It just kept right here. It was like, it wasn't wide enough to accommodate the back high hip for me. So I think this one turned out pretty good. We can see the front, the side, and then we have the back. And as you can see, like, it has definitely, it's not as wrinkly, or in this area, it's not as bad as it was. So I also think with some boning, that'll definitely be nice and smooth back there. So overall, I think it looks really good. There are still some changes I want to make. So when I made this back piece wider, it overall got interestingly wider. So technically, if I wanted to, I could completely close this lacing gap. So I'm gonna have to take it in a bit. I think specifically in the bust, there's still amount of give. And I think because the pattern is rather curved here, I'm going to probably straighten it out to reduce it through here and give more lift. And then the other changes are just some stylistic aesthetic changes, like lowering this as I already have, but then I have to kind of match that with the tabs, the skirts, and also raising the back just about an inch or so. But overall, I think it looks good. This time I remembered to add some straps so that I can properly fit it with the straps, since this pattern was drafted to have straps. And I was just lazy the first time. So straps are on. Now, I think it looks really good. So next step is to make my final adjustments to my pattern, and then I'm going to retrace it on, on some clean paper. That way I can mark out some boning channels, boning placement, etc. And then in the next video, I'm going to start cutting and sewing the final pair. So this is kind of where I'm stopping. I think it's a good place. I think I got it to a good, like, I'm not, like, this doesn't feel like it's cutting in. I feel like the waist is in the right place now. Hitting about, like, my waist is probably about there. So like from this tab, that's about an inch, which is what the pattern suggests. And then the back looks good. So just taking it in a bit, and then I'm calling it. So yeah. So before the video ends, I just wanted to quickly go over all the changes I made throughout the process and how that was applied to the pattern. So here in green, we have the original pattern, which is a size 42 in the curvy option, straight from the scoop pattern itself. In red, I have my second mock-up, and this I kind of calling mock-up 2.1 because this has the updated side back panel, which was slashed and spread to accommodate the hip. This mock-up also includes reducing the length of each pattern piece by 1 inch, as well as reducing the bust by 1/4 of an inch. Now I kind of have this overlaid and it's kind of hard to see, like it only looks like I might have reduced the center front or the front panel itself by like 1/2 inch, but like 1/2 inch went to reducing, to lengthening it. Now there were still some things I wanted to change going into the final pattern here. I wanted to increase the side back, side front, and back heights by about 1 inch. I also, when shortening the pattern and opening up the hip in the second mock-up, I ended up adding ease, which I didn't realize I was doing, but somehow. So when I put on that second mock-up, there was a lot more space than I was expecting. And if I had really wanted to, I probably could have shut the back lacing completely. So what I went ahead and did was take about 1/8 of an inch off of each side of each panel. The side front panel, however, had a little bit more taken out, and that was because there was just a little bit more room in that upper front like bust area. So I elected to just remove just a smidge more out of those panels. I also took some more out of the waist just to give a little bit more reduction in that area. Now, because I had lengthened the front point of the front panel, I needed to kind of blend that line going up the skirts. And so I reshaped the tabs on the side panel to accommodate that new length. The other change is that I'm no longer going with the very wavy or scallopy tabs of the original pattern. I kind of like the look of the more square tabs, and so that's kind of what I have kind of roughly laid out on my pattern pieces, and will determine when I finally cut my pattern out. And so with that done, I moved on to the boning channels. Now, since I made all these changes, the boning placements that were provided with the pattern no longer really worked with the different shapes, especially that side back piece, because the angles of that really kind of changed with all my adjustments. But I still used them as a guide to kind of have an idea of where to place things. And so now I have everything ready. All my boning channels are marked. And so I'm going to take all this information, and in the next video, we can put it to use in the final version. So see you then. You hear her purr?